think we did. Hello, hello.
Hello,
Welcome
welcome
to
back.
Sundays with Steadyworth. Tonight we're tackling one of the bigger questions that we get tapped in on is, am I doing the right things to actually be ready for retirement? What accounts should I use? How much should I be saving? And how do I know if I'm on track? I'm Laura, a life and leadership coach,
And
and
I'm
this is my amazing husband, Gabe. CFP, go ahead.
Yes, we are excited to get into this topic and just talk about how regular, ordinary people can build extraordinary an extraordinary net worth inside of their retirement accounts, whether it's 401k, 403b, any type of employer sponsored account, and just we're excited to get into it.
This is a topic that a lot of people have questions about, and a lot of people don't know a lot about. And so we're excited to kind of tap in and get going here. So we're continuing with the format from last week, where we've got a few slides that we're going to present for you. And hold on, I'm getting my screen set up over here so I can see you guys appropriately. So if you are joining us today, thank you so much. Please leave a comment below telling us where you're joining us from. Super excited to have you here. Can't wait to dive into this topic. So the first kind of thing we were talking about as we were preparing for this that I thought was super interesting was kind of this, we're going to talk a lot about the statistics today around retirement savings, kind of some of the crisis that a lot of people are dealing with. How did this begin? Like, how did we get into a place where we're in a retirement crisis? I feel like that's kind of what you were sharing earlier was really helpful context as we dive into some of the stats.
So I'm just going to go. So the current generation that has retired is in a retirement crisis, and that's pretty much I would consider to be our parents' generation. So those people who are age 60 through maybe 75 right now. And I don't know the exact date range of the different generations, how, generation X, Y, but I was looking up, and so there's the baby boomer generation and there's the silent generation. And so the generation that was basically born in the 20s, like right before, who served in World War II, when they got back, when World War II was over, the US emerged winning the war and had a very strong economy. So those people who came back from the war were then started working, doing all kinds of things, like when the US started just really expanding in the auto industry that we were seeing in Detroit, the tire industry that we were seeing in Ohio, just building all kinds of stuff. All just new innovations were happening during this time. And the companies that they were working for, and this is kind of, we had these types of accounts that were called pension accounts that were defined benefit accounts. And so basically it was the company's responsibility that if you had somebody come work for you for a certain amount of years, you told them how much money they would get at retirement, and they got to have that. As long as they worked that certain amount of years, they got that amount of retirement. So this would be our parents' generation who worked in factories, doing all kinds of stuff. So I know my grandfather got a pension, and when he retired, he was able to, in some essence, it seemed like he lived a better life retired than he did when he was working. So I remember when he retired, he bought a house that was he living in Ohio that was, I don't know, maybe 2-3 times the size of the house that he was actually had the whole time he was working. So he was,
Wow.
his quality of life just continued. It was very stable. But around the late 70s, the government passed this act called, it was like the Section 401k Act. And I was thinking, like, what would make the US government decide to pass a Section 401k Act? Like, why would the government even care about retirement accounts? And I'm guessing, just like anything else that the government passes, or majority of the things that gets passed, somebody probably started lobbying and like, hey, how can we take care of people and not have to be on the hook for it? Because once again, these pensions were causing these companies a lot of money. Because you have somebody who works for you, people are living longer, and as soon as that person retires, you have to cut this check every month or multiple times a month until this person passes away. So I can just tell you, my grandfather retiring at age 60 whatever, and then living to almost 90. I mean, he collected his pension check for almost as long as he probably worked for the company.
Yeah.
And so And so what happened is that they came up with this thing called a 401k account. And so now the burden of needing to fund the account moved from the company to the individual. And so now the individual is needing to fund their retirement account. And as you know, if you've had a 401k account, the company is not responsible for funding it. You're responsible for funding it. Now, companies are incentivized to give you a little match. It might be 2-3%. It might be more depending on where you work at. But generally speaking, you're responsible for funding your retirement account and making sure that it stays on target. And you're also responsible for funding any other account that you might need when it goes into that. You may also need as supplemental benefits when it goes into retirement. And so not a lot of education has been offered around these types of accounts. And so you can imagine like a generation like my grandfather's generation who's just having a pension to going to my dad's generation who is, the first generation who's having these retiring with these 401k accounts. And it's like, hey, I've never heard mom or dad, as in he's never heard his mom or dad speak of a 401k account because they didn't have them. And so then now all of a sudden, this generation happening that is not properly prepared to go into retirement. They don't know exactly how much money they need to save in these accounts. Can I just save a portion? Do I need to be maxing it out? They don't know anything about the stock market. What's investing in it? What should this type of account be invested in? So there's a huge education gap that has now caused this generation that has gone into retirement and that they are underfunded. So many people have 401ks that have retired. It's just that there's not enough money in them to support their current lifestyle of living so that they could be at, at least where they were at or possibly even better. And so that has what is kicked off here in the great retirement crisis. And so 401ks that went for the 401k, section 401k, from the research I did, this law passed for it to implement 401ks in 1978, and they started to become, they were invented in 1978. They started becoming more widespread in the beginning of the 80s. And so when you think about this, I mean, I was born in the 80s. So, I mean, 401k accounts are less than 50 years old.
Yeah.
And so they haven't been around that long. Now, I do want to say one great thing that they did do is that when you have, especially in the working economy that we have now, when you have a pensions are set up for you to work at one company for a very long time, and then you get a retirement benefit. Whereas one thing that 401k accounts did do, which we'll talk about this a little bit later, is that they made retirement benefits portable. And so when you work, you can work at, I mean, I know Laura's had multiple jobs. I've had multiple jobs. I've only had one that offered a 401k, but we'll talk about what happens if your job doesn't offer 401k a little bit later. But if you've worked at multiple jobs that offer multiple 401ks, you can actually they're portable, so you can take them with you when you leave. Whereas if you work at a job that offers a pension and you work there and you're not there for enough time to receive that pension, then you just kind of miss out on those benefits. And it's not the same.
Well, there's a couple of takeaways that I am getting even from the beginning, like this beginning section. One, it's interesting that you mentioned, like, excuse me, hearing or seeing your grandfather live like a better life in retirement than he did while he was working. Because I feel like that idea has really stuck through the generations, that people have kind of created this idea in their head that my retirement is going to be better than, I'm like this idea of like, I'm going to retire and it's going to be so much better than working all this time. But there was a little bit more of an incentive, one, to work at that one company the whole time, because like you said, it was a defined pension. And so I just want to like dig in on that a little bit more. That was something like when you got hired, it was a predetermined amount that you would get paid and after you retired, right?
Yeah,
and
so
that didn't change.
pensions have different ways of calculating. I didn't brush up fully on how all of them work before this call, but they have defined benefits, that the benefit is defined prior to before retirement, when you know how much money you'll get. Then they have the most recent pension, and I forget the name of it, but it's the type where it's like you can work. It runs a calculation based off of your years of service and how much money you made. And so, and then they run some calculation and they kick out how much money you can make. And so depending on where you're working at, pensions are a lot different. So like if you're working, and a lot of times private companies don't offer pensions anymore, or many private companies don't offer pensions anymore, just because the burden of funding them is so high. So a lot of times when people have pensions in this current time, it's going to be a government, they're going to work for a government job. So maybe they're a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer,
Yeah.
work in the military. But even with that, I mean, you have to work several years to get like I have a cousin who's retiring from the military, and I believe that he's going to get probably like 95% of his final wage, but after 30 something
Yeah.
years. So, it's not like, oh, I just worked for 20 years and then
Right.
I'm getting a pension that's matching what I was making. It's like, no, you have to really put in those years to get that a good amount in your pension.
So there's less, like, in that state or in that system, there's less of a mindset shift from my day-to-day life to retirement, because your salary or your income is basically the same,
Right.
right? And so what you're saying is that what our parents or our parents generation grew up with, this idea of like, okay, my employer is actually taking care of my retirement, so I don't have to think too much about it. I already know how that's going to look and what it's going to feel like, so I can just work now, and then when I retire, everything's going to be all good. I'm just going to have more time on my hands, basically, was the mentality.
I mean, I think that was just how it was, based off of those companies that they had. We're talking, areas like my grandfather, it was in Ohio. He grew up working. I mean, he was his adult job was working in a factory. And so he just continued on. And I think, in that area, there was a lot of factories in Ohio. And so if you were in one that you liked, maybe you just stayed it, or maybe you were incentivized, like in the current terms, what they call in corporate America, golden handcuffs, when you have a high salary or when you have stock
Stock
options.
options, yeah.
Yeah. So, now maybe for them, it was the pensions. And so I don't know what would have happened if they would have switched something up, but I just feel like in that previous generation, not just feel like is evident that in older generations, they stayed at jobs a lot longer than what we do in our current generation. It's rare when you hear of someone. I mean, I'm in my 40s, early 40s. It's rare for me to hear of somebody who's 40 something who's like, oh yeah, I've worked at the same place for the last 20 years. I mean,
Yeah, I think
honestly, I don't know of anyone who's worked at the same place for the last 20 years who I went to high school with.
right, yeah. I can think of one person, and it's only because I was shocked when I heard it.
Yeah, and I feel like ththose types of people are probably like somebody who maybe started working at Facebook or Meta when it was founded. It's like, yeah, I got in at Meta in 2006, and it'll be 20 years next
And
year.
I've survived several layoffs.
Right, but
I don't know. That would be a whole nother topic that we could divulge on,
yeah,
is
but
like,
it's not often.
yeah. But the point that I'm making when I'm saying this is kind of our overarching point, is like this shift in responsibility from employers are basically responsible for helping their people retire well, to you're responsible for retiring well. And then the gap of really being like not having the education of what that looks like, how to even do it, what calculations to do, all of that stuff was kind of calculated for them
Right.
based on a variety of different factors, I'm sure, at the time. But now you kind of have to have a little bit more knowledge and understanding about how that works in order to set yourself up for success at the end, which is kind of what we're, when you decide to retire, which is what we're talking about today.
Sure.
And so like this was really, and we have our slides, of course, and I'm just going to make our faces big for a second, but bigger. There is a shift in responsibility. So when there's a shift in responsibility, you have to, like, and this is just me from a change management perspective, like when you change roles, when you have some sort of change, you need to obviously communicate about it. You need to train on it and make sure that people actually know how to do what they need to do in order to be successful. And then there is elements of behavior change, mindset change that has to go along with it today, or along with it as well. So that's just kind of where my mind was thinking as you were sharing the story, and how we kind of got here today, which, is we're in a place right now where a recent nationwide survey, and this is a Forbes article from 2024, said that working Americans, about 79%, agree that the nation faces a retirement savings crisis, which is up from 67% in 2020. And more than half of Americans are concerned that they cannot achieve financial security in retirement. So obviously, we've got a big problem that we're trying to solve, and we're trying to help other people, obviously, people solve. Another article, and we can drop all of these in the chat or in the description box below as well. But about 55% of Americans have never even tried to figure out how much they need to save for retirement. So a lot of people are just winging it, like, oh, well, I'll just, contribute to my 401k. They're not looking at the numbers. They don't necessarily know how to project the numbers out. So they're saving, but by the time, what you were saying earlier, by the time they get to retirement age, it's nowhere near what they need, actually, given inflation and all these other factors. And younger people obviously it says younger people are less likely to see themselves as on track. And so that's one thing that we want to solve for today as well. This is an article from NerdWallet that's just showing you the average retirement savings by age. So under 35 is about $50,000. And then as you can see, 75 and older is about 462. And depending on your lifestyle, where you live, that is not a lot of money anymore. It may seem like a lot of money, but when you think about what your salary is per year, paying taxes, rising living expenses, all that stuff, that won't take you too far. Especially if you want to increase your lifestyle expenses in retirement, like doing more travel, etc., which we'll talk a little bit more about as well. And this is from Prudential. So this is just talking a little bit about how, the lack of financial security is a big, a big indicator of mental health as well. So if you're feeling that way, you're more likely to struggle with mental health than those who do feel financially secure, which is obviously makes this a vitally important topic when it comes to, money and education and making sure that you're actually equipped. And so just wanted to share some of that, not to be discouraging necessarily, but just to kind of light that fire under you. If you're a younger person wanting to learn about this, if you're an older person, middle-aged person, that I think I was reading an article earlier today as we were doing research for this, and it was like, the best time to start saving for retirement is your current age. Like right now.
Yeah. So, I think the thing is, like, this isn't meant to be discouraging or doom and gloom. The point is of this is meant to shine some light on a problem that we're having. And as soon as there's light on there, then we can come up with solutions on how to fix it, which is what we're going to be addressing on the other part of this episode, is how can we start saving for retirement, what options are available, so forth and so forth. But it's very important just to bring up, hey, what is the current issue? What is society seeing as a whole? Just because, hey, this is something that's been going on for a while. And it's like, the previous generation wasn't equipped with the proper information. And so how can we make sure that this doesn't continue on for multiple generations? So that's what we're working to do, is to equip the current generation with the proper information that they need, so that we're not this problem isn't persisting in another 20, 40 years from now.
That's right. Absolutely. And then, so here are just like a couple barriers that are blocking retirement savings. And some of this is just external environment, your economic, different circumstances. Some of it's internal, but just kind of wanted to talk a lot of, like Gabe said, some of this stuff is just not your fault at all. Some of this stuff, when it comes into your awareness, you have more agency and control over what choices you can make. And so here's an article from CNBC talking about why, it's our brains make it so hard for us to save for retirement. And hopefully you can see this over my virtual highlights here. But, psychological and behavior are a big factor in saving for retirement. Oftentimes people have a tendency to just stick to their current situation because it's easier to do that than to make a change, and this is something that's called the status quo bias. And so this is just something where it's like, hey, I'm just going to keep things moving. I may or may not do this later. because right now it's easier to stay the same than to make a change. So just want to encourage you that may be true now, but it won't always be true. And so making a little bit of a pivot here is going to pay dividends for you in the future. And then this clip is also from the Journal of Accountancy, where 54% of people underestimate how much money they will need to retire. And we're going to talk about that today too, about how you can actually project those numbers and get a feel for how much you need to be saving and what you may need to shift in your current lifestyle in order to make sure that you can have a funded nest egg, not an underfunded nest egg. So those are some of the barriers, psychological behavior. Then there are also financial and economical barriers as well. This is an article particularly speaking to non-traditional workers. So this is people who are like self-employed, business owners, gig workers, people who don't necessarily have access to a workplace plan. And their biggest barrier is that they do not have access to a workplace plan, and they're not exactly sure what they should be doing instead. And then it mentions a couple other barriers as well, like lack of income. I think a big one that we've heard with different clients and different people that we've talked to is, what if I need money for something else that comes up, like an emergency or, a medical bill or something like that? I want to make sure that I have extra cash on hand. And so that's a big barrier for people. There are people who are just uninterested and don't want to put in the effort. But then again, like we said, lack of knowledge is a big piece of this as well. And so we want to bridge that gap tonight. And then knowledge, which kind of leads me into this next one. And when I read this article, I was so encouraged, not only because this is what Gabe and I help people do on a regular basis with their finances, but what I found in my own journey. And some of you guys know this, some of you don't. I did not start off a finance guru at all. I was very intimidated by money. And when I started dating Gabe, he kind of helped me learn and educate myself about investing and things like that. And this article speaks to that there's a significant correlation between knowledge and the likelihood that person will take advantage of more sophisticated financial tools. So the lack of knowledge is what's preventing a lot of people from taking advantage from retirement accounts, investing accounts, mutual funds, ETFs, or similar strategies to grow their wealth. And so it's keep.
Your volume just went out. You just hit your microphone and hit it on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There's a little tap on the top of my microphone, and so it muted me. But yeah, so the knowledge is what really allows people to invest in high return assets, and as a result, get much higher wealth accumulation in retirement. So knowledge is a big deal and can really make a big difference in how you save and what tools you can take advantage of and what you feel comfortable taking advantage of. And again, this is something that Gabe and I teach people how to do. That's how our model works. We're not investing for you. We're teaching you how to run your own ship and build your own wealth, which is really fun and exciting for both of us. And then it does say on the second part, this is a separate article, that among the people who didn't rate themselves very high in terms of retirement knowledge, had 73% had less than $1,000 saved up for retirement, compared to the group who felt confident about their retirement smarts. 81% of this group had above 100,000. So this just kind of speaks to the power of knowledge and doing something with that knowledge. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this off to Gabe so he can talk a little bit more about the 5 key questions for retirement planning. And this is like the nitty gritty in terms of how you're actually going to be able to build a retirement plan, get clear on what it is, get confident. Is there anything about those statistics, Gabe, that surprised you, or you feel like people should take note of?
I mean, I think it comes down to this: you don't know what you don't know. And so it's not surprising that people who don't know what they don't know didn't save for retirement. They're just not prepared for it. And I think even myself, if I wasn't working in finance and hadn't studied everything that I studied, how would I know? It's unfortunate that this stuff isn't just taught in schools. We learn a lot of stuff in schools, and not to beat up on the school system, but we learn a lot of stuff in schools that we don't use in regular everyday life. Whereas needing to save for retirement, needing to understand how money works, needing to understand how mortgage rate works, interest rates, credit cards, all of that's stuff that everybody as an adult has to deal with, starting
Yeah.
from age 18, from receiving credit cards in the mail. Do I want to do this? How does compound interest work for me? How does it work against me? But unless you took an econ class in high school, and I took one for, we had one for a semester, and it was one of my favorite classes. It just wasn't enough time. You can't really just learn this stuff. And so, I mean, you can, but unless you just are dying to go out and read books about finance and nerd, which most people aren't, you generally won't learn this stuff. And so you either have to the best thing is really to just take the effort, put in the effort to start doing it, because it should be offered as a general elective in college, in high school, and in junior high, but it's not. And so it's really up to us to educate ourselves, because this is what's really the most important. I mean, when you become an adult, you spend at minimum, if you're working a regular full-time job, a full-time job is like 40 hours a week. Many people working full-time jobs can even work more than 40, 50 plus. And the money that we make, how can we make that money go as far as it possibly can if we're not educated on what to do with that money?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. All right, I'm pulling this back up. I wanted to see. Yeah. All right. So the first thing that we've got is, what is available to people?
And so the question is, go ahead.
No, just from a retirement accounts perspective. So we're just talking retirement accounts.
Yeah. So the question number one is, what's available to you? Like, what's available to me? And so I'm looking at the left side of the screen, 401k, 403b. These are traditional employer-sponsored retirement accounts. I did not put down here under just anything about pensions. Depending on where you work, pensions are still available, but there's not just a one size fits all, whereas these more kind of employer contribution accounts or elective deferral accounts, these are more of a one size fits all for the most part, but pensions are very different. So we're not really touching on those in here. But I will say, depending on if you do have a pension, it is likely that you may need some of these other types of elective deferral accounts, such as an IRA, and we'll hop on into it. But yeah, so 401k, 403b, these are employer-sponsored accounts. So I can say, if you're working a job and your job has an employer-sponsored account, it also could be a SEP IRA, maybe if you're at a smaller company. These are the types of accounts where when you get paid, you can take money directly from your check and put it into this account. It goes in tax deferred. So let's say you're making $100,000 a year and you put $10,000 in that account, you get taxed on $90,000. And so setting up an account with your employer, one, it's the easiest because they're the one who's cutting your check. So it going straight into the retirement account is really great. A lot of times employers offer a match when you're putting money in. Not all employers do, but a lot of them do. And so if you're getting a match on already contributing to something, I mean, this is just free money. Why not get the free money? And so I would say that if you have access to an employer-sponsored retirement account, this is a great place to start. Now, if you do not have access to an employer-sponsored retirement account, another place that you could start is a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA does have income phase out amounts depending on how much you make, and I didn't bring those to this conversation, but I want to say it's like 150, or I don't know, it's 150 something for single and like 235 for married filing jointly for making a Roth IRA contribution. Now, but traditional IRAs, it doesn't matter how much money you make if you're not an active participant in another employee-sponsored account or another type of retirement account, you can always contribute to a traditional IRA and make a deductible contribution. Now, one thing about contributing to a traditional IRA is that if you're under the age 50, for the year of 2025, the contribution amount is $7,000, whereas for a 401k, I believe it's like
we have that in
24,000 or so. And so, the 401k is a little bit over 3 times the amount. And so that's the reason why you would maybe want to entertain a 401k over a traditional IRA because you actually can put more into it. Now, traditional IRA, actually have more control over the investments in the traditional IRA because you get to choose what you want to be invested in. Whereas generally for a 401k and those types of employer sponsored retirement accounts, they are required to give you a list of things that you can invest in. And usually it's like mutual funds, ETFs, and different things like that. Now, if you're contributing to a Roth IRA, if you make $100,000 a year and you put in the max, if you're under age 50, which is $7,000, you do not get a $7,000 deduction from your taxable income like how you would with the traditional IRA or how you would if you're putting money into an employer sponsored 401k. But what you do is once you put that $7,000 in and it's invested, let's say that $7,000, because you've paid taxes on it that one time, all of the investment gains over however many years you have that account are no longer taxable as long as you take the distributions after age 59 and a half and your account has been open for 5 years. So you have to be 59 and a half and your account has to be open for 5 years and you don't have to pay any more additional taxes. Whereas the traditional IRA, when you put money in there, you get the deduction on the year you put it in, but when you pull it out as tax as ordinary income. And so I think there's an argument I don't think there's an argument. There is an argument for actually having a mix of all of these accounts throughout your working career. And so having a 401k, which is an employer sponsored account, allows you to put a lot of money in there. And so if you can contribute over $7,000 a year, that's a great account. I mean, even if you're contributing under 7,000, but it's a great account just to put money in, get as much money as you can in there that you can reasonably afford, which we'll touch on later. The portability we were talking about is that say you leave a job and you want to take that 401k with you, you don't have to leave it at that employer. You can actually roll that over into a traditional IRA, and now you can control your investments and you're over them and you're over how it's invested a little. You can get down into the nitty gritty a little bit more than what maybe your employer offered you. And then a Roth IRA could still be, if you qualify through income, it could also be a great option for you too, because it is going to give you, as long as you've had it open, as long as you adhere to the rules, it will allow you to have a source of income that's not taxable during retirement. So it's tax free, whereas the traditional will be taxed at ordinary income rates.
Yeah, and we talk a little bit about, we have a slide for each of this. If you didn't catch that, we're going to re-stamp on some of these things. But one thing that I've read online or seen as well is, you don't want to there is a way to, and maybe I'll go to this next slide to talk about, oh no, okay. There is like a way to be tax efficient because you're not going to want everything to be taxable in retirement. You're going to want to find some sort of strategy where some of it is taxable, some of it's not, or is that too complicated? Am I going down a complicated road?
Well, wait, I mean, figuring out the exact tax strategy of what you should do, we're going to touch on a different, I think we'll just move on because we're going to touch on it a little bit in the slide, but we're not going to go heavy into taxes because that's going to be, I think, point number 3.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. So we'll pause on that and revisit. But next question is, what amount am I able to contribute? And you kind of touched on this a little bit, and hopefully this isn't too small for people to see.
Yes. And so this is talking about, so if under 50, so 23,500, is it 23,500 or 24 for this year? I almost
didn't double check myself. So let me just Google really quick. Hold on. It is 23 as of 2025. Yeah, 23.5.
Okay, great. And so you're able to contribute these amounts, but really what I want you to think about is these are the amounts that you can contribute up to in these accounts, but how much can you afford to contribute out of your paycheck? Because, you may have a job and your income may be a certain level right now, and due to your bills and student loans or whatever you have going on, maybe you can't, even you have the 401k or the 403b, you can't contribute the full 23.5. Maybe you're contributing $300 a check, or, and it's 600, 6 times 12, 72. And so maybe you're contributing, 7,200 a year into your retirement account. But I think the goal is figuring out, hey, how much can I contribute to get started? And so don't wait till, I'm not going to do anything until I can contribute the whole $7,000
Right.
to a IRA, or until I can contribute the whole 23.5. Start anytime. When I first started contributing to my IRA at the job I was working at in 2016, I started with $100 a check, and it's going in pre-tax. So I didn't even feel it. So it's like, imagine I'm putting in 100 and I'm only really seeing, I feel like it only affected my check maybe $25. My biggest regret when I was doing that is I didn't really need all of the money that I thought I needed. I wish I would have started off with a minimum of $200 a check. And so I wish I would have started off contributing more. And so we have retirement calculators online. We can link one in the show notes. There's a great ADP calculator. You can go in there and play with the numbers and see how much
Yeah.
and put in all of your deductions that you get out of your paycheck, and figure out, okay, if I put in 300 a check, if I put in 500 a check, if I put in 1,000 a check, this is what my after taxes will look like. But I want to encourage you, figure out how much you can put in, but constantly be working on, hey, I need to figure out how can I really set myself up to be in a good place for retirement?
Well,
Don't let
yeah.
these numbers scare you.
Yeah, I would say like quick plug, and we can drop it in the show notes as well, but the net income calculator on ADP's website is one of my favorite things that we've shared with people and different clients when we've done workshops and stuff, because if you were to pull a paycheck from your or a pay stub from your job and actually look at all your deductions, you can input some of those numbers into that calculator and you can start to see what a contribution would look like. Of course, it's a rough estimate, but you could actually see what a contribution to your 401k would look like on the other side of your paycheck before, if you didn't feel comfortable or confident guessing. When I was young, and I would not recommend this, I started contributing, and then I would get my paycheck and I'd be like, you know what? I think I could probably do a little bit more. And then I would go in and I would add up a percentage point. And, my story about my 401k, and this was as I was growing my career, as I was growing my income, I accidentally maxed out my 401k one year. And I was like, how did this happen? Like, I have more in my paycheck. And it was like December. I think it was like November or December. And so it would have been better to take a more thoughtful approach, I think, versus guessing and accidentally doing it. But it did give me some confidence that I could probably do that the next year and the next year and the next year, given that I didn't have big plans to change my lifestyle expenses, get a new apartment, do anything like that. And just my main goal was to grow my career and grow my income. So that was just an exciting thing for me. But I think, when you finally sit down and do it and you can see how much you can contribute, it can be very motivating to actually take action on it. And so we encourage you to get into that, find that ADP net income calculator, and we'll again drop it in the show notes. But that was my one comment there. And so you can see here, I don't know if you wanted to just reiterate the numbers on here.
Yes. So for the Roth IRA, you can contribute 7,000. All IRAs have the same. So Roth IRA is 7,000. Traditional IRA 7,000. There's an age 50 catch up. That's an additional $1,000. So if you're age 50 or older, you could do $8,000. The employer sponsor retirement account, the 401k, has 23,500. If you're 50 or older, you can do a $7,500 catch up, which will put you at $31,000 for the year. And so these are all of the amounts that you can contribute. But really, what I want you to think about when you think about how, not just the amounts that the accounts allow, but how much can I contribute? So what's available to me? How much can I afford to contribute?
Yep. Okay, cool. All right. And then you did mention this, but just
Okay.
want to reiterate this.
Now the next thing, which we kind of touched on earlier, which is how does this impact my tax strategy now and in the future? And so once again, all of these accounts are taxed two different ways. So the employer sponsored retirement account allows you to save on taxes now. So if you're making $100,000, you put in, we're going to say, just be generous, you put in 20. And so you get taxed on $80,000 right now. But when you start pulling money out of your employer sponsored retirement account, it gets taxed as regular income, whatever your regular income bracket is. But you also want to think about when you get Social Security, it's getting taxed as well. If you have a traditional brokerage account and you're taking long-term capital gains, hopefully, because you have capital gains that have been there for longer for longer than a year, it's still getting taxed. It's going to be taxed lower than ordinary income, but you're still paying taxes on that. So the thing is that what sorts of income strategies can you have that's in a lower tax bracket? And so do you have money, possibly you have some cash sitting in a cash account, or you have a Roth IRA, and you have adhere to the account limits, and you can pull money out of the Roth and save some taxes on that. And so these are the things we want you to be thinking about: is how can you can you have different buckets of money that are taxed at different rates, so that when you get into retirement, you're not constantly in an extremely high tax bracket.
And if you have any questions about this specifically, feel free to drop them in the chat. We are going to take questions. We're always open to taking questions, especially as they come in. So you don't need to wait till the end. But comment them in the chat. If you're watching this later, feel free to comment them. We'll reach out to you. If you have a specific question that you don't want to put in the chat, we'll also have a link to schedule a 15-minute call with us where we can answer a question for you as well. So just want to plug that in, because sometimes I could feel like it possibly is overwhelming. How, it's like I'm just getting started, or, I've started, but I still don't really have a strong strategy. I'm just trying to put money away. This would be something that you could tap in a professional, and they can help you kind of understand what your options are. So I just want to plug that really quick.
Okay, awesome.
All right, cool. All right. So what non-retirement money do I have available when I need cash?
Yes. So this is the next thing to think about.
Yes.
And so we're building here. So what accounts are available to me? How much am I able to contribute to these accounts? How does this affect my taxes in retirement? But also, I want you to think about what non-retirement money do you have? Because once again, and I didn't touch on this, so I'm sorry. So let me backtrack. When you put money into these, whether it's a traditional 401k, whether it's an IRA or a Roth IRA, these types of accounts, you are not supposed to pull money out of until you are age 59 and a half. For the Roth IRA, once again, 59 and a half, and the account's been open for 5 years. But if you pull money out of these types of accounts prior to 59 and a half, the traditional 401k, the traditional IRA, of course, it's taxable because you're never getting out of paying taxes, but there's also a 10% penalty for taking that money out. And so that's why we're asking, what non-retirement money do I have available when I need cash? Because we want to make sure you're not putting all of your money into a retirement account, and then you're trying to pull it back out, and then you're getting penalized when you're pulling it out. That turns into a problem. And so that's why we want to make sure that you have a balance between, maybe you have some money in a savings account, high yield savings, you have some money maybe in a regular bank account or an emergency fund, a traditional brokerage account, where if something happens, a real life situation where, like, maybe you need to buy a new car because your car went out, or maybe you need to put a roof on your house, or maybe, I don't know what's going on, you family emergency, medical emergency, you're not like, oh, I've been putting all this money in my retirement account. That's my piggy bank. Let me go get some money out of there. Now, we'll say that some 401ks do allow for loans, but you do not want to take a loan. Warren Buffett famously said, and hopefully I can get this quote right, he was like, when money is compounding, you do not want to interrupt it.
That's right.
So when your money is working, you do not want to interrupt it. Just like you don't want to be interrupted, or maybe you do want to be interrupted while you're working. It's like, let me take a quick break. You do not want your money. It's one of your best employees. You do not want your money taking a break when it is working for you. And so it's not a great thing to take a loan from your 401k. Of course, there are emergencies. So if one comes up and you had to do that, then you had to do what you had to do. But when you by taking a loan, it stops it from compounding. What it does do, though, when you do take a loan from your 401k, you don't get hit with the 10% penalty, and it's not taxable. But now, if you don't pay and once again, don't quote me on this, everybody's 401k rules are different, but if you don't pay that loan back, you do get hit with the 10% penalty, and it is taxable because keep in mind, a loan is a loan, but once it's not paid back, it then turns into a distribution. And so then once it's a distribution, it switches from a loan to a distribution. You want to make sure that you have read and fully understand all of your 401k documents. And once again, I know we didn't say this at the beginning, but all of this content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And if you have specific questions about your financial situation, you should contact your financial advisor or professional who could speak to your unique situation, because you're a unique being created and, created by our unique Lord. And so I can't generalize. I wouldn't dare to generalize your situation here. But what I can tell you is that you need to be saving for retirement.
And if you don't have a financial advisor who you can trust, feel free to book time with us. Gabe
Yes,
is a
but we do
CFP.
not work as financial advisors. We work as coaches. So I want to say the difference, and just to touch on that really quick, is that, financial advisors give advice, and then a traditional financial advisor is doing all of the things for you. So that you give your money to them, they manage your money for you in accounts, they build you a financial plan, they understand your goals, and then they help you execute. And then they charge you a fee for that. We are an education only company. So what we're doing is we're teaching you how to think like your own financial advisor. We're coaches. We are on the sideline. You are on the field making the plays. So we don't manage any money. We will teach you how to run your own self-directed brokerage accounts. A self-directed means you are directing it. So we'll teach you how to run your own self-directed IRA, Roth IRA. If you have a 401k and you're able to switch up the investments in it, or you don't understand what it's invested in, we will teach you how to understand the different investments that your employer allows you to invest in your 401k. You want to understand how to roll over your old 401k into a Roth IRA. We teach you how to do that. So we're teaching everything. How you want to understand, hey, I would like to, in 5 years, maybe quit my job and travel to Europe for 2 years. We teach you how to start saving money, how to invest money the right way, what different accounts to keep it in so that you can connect your money to your goals. So we're constantly teaching you how it is that you can be more hands-on with your money. How can you live a life that you're excited about today while staying within your means and planning for a financially responsible future? So that's what we're doing here at Steadyworth. A little shameless plug, but this podcast is sponsored by Steadyworth. Yes, this is Sundays by Steadyworth. So we're going to get back to our regular showing. And so, yes.
Okay, so that was that the last one? I thought we had another one. Another question. Was that 5 questions?
I believe that was 4.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Pause.
But I can tell you the 5th question. I know what it is.
Okay, great. Go for it.
So the 5th question is what is your lifestyle? When you're thinking about that, let's just start from the top because we're building on all 5. So it's what accounts are available to me. Number 1, how much am I able to contribute? Number 2, how does this play into my tax strategy for savings for retirement accounts? Number 4 is what was number 4 that we just touched on?
Non-cash or
what accounts do I have available? What
accounts
do I have available to me that are non-retirement accounts that if I have a financial emergency that I can contribute to, that I can pull money from so that I'm not getting penalized by taking money out of my traditional retirement accounts? Because these accounts are built to incentivize you to save for retirement. The last one is, and this is really important, is what is my lifestyle? Because what we're basically trying to solve here when we're talking about saving for retirement, we're trying to solve for lifestyle. We are saving money in accounts that are positioned, some for retirement, some that are positioned for non-retirement, but to support you in your lifestyle when you do decide to retire. And that is really important. Just like I talked about my grandfather, it said it looked like his lifestyle actually elevated when he went to retirement. I know a lot of people, it's like this thing that we see. It's like, oh, I'm retired. Now I'm on the beach. Now I'm traveling. And keep in mind, you're retired. Maybe you have kids, you have grandkids. Maybe you want to support your grandkids going through college. You want to pay for a child's wedding. There's always something more to pay for. But that is why you want to think, okay, what is my current lifestyle and am I saving enough? Because even if you're maxing out the $23,500 for retirement, and let's say you're making 200, 250, 300, which I see a ton of people doing now, 400, saving $23,000 a year, even investing it is not going to be enough to replace a $400,000 salary in retirement. Unless maybe 10 years ago, you were taking that 23 or whatever you were saving and you're buying Bitcoin. you'll likely be in a good place. Because if you put, if you put $10,000 in a Bitcoin 10 years ago, it's at like 4 million. And so if you've done that a few good times and you got 8-10 million, you're on a different trajectory. But
Right.
putting $24,000 away and you're making $200,000, $300,000 is not going to be enough to sustain you for retirement. That's why it's really important to run some retirement calculators, understand what your lifestyle is, because if you're making $400,000 and you're spending 150, hey, maybe the difference isn't that big. But if you're making 400 and spending 450, which I see as well happen quite often, people are spending way more money than what they're making.
Yeah.
You won't be able to continue to sustain that. And so, and the other thing is that when we're talking about investing, you can't also, if you are, there are different people who, we looked it up earlier this year, today, there's about a third of people who are involved in their career and they're looking to grow their career. Some people are just happy in their career with whatever they're doing. They're not maybe looking to grow their income. But I just want to touch on investing really quick and just say, you can't invest your way out of under earning. So if you have better potential that you can earn more, you have to also understand that if you're choosing to stay in a career or choosing to stay in a place where you earn less, and I want to understand that everything is not about money, but when you make that decision, that's also a decision that you're going to have to live with later on in retirement. And I just want to say, and I just want to bring all the pieces together too. So, and there's quality of life, but there's quality of life on both sides. There's a quality of life right now that you're living, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. There's also the quality of life that you have in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And a lot of times, those years can be just as expensive as these years, even though you're not taking care of children. Even later on in life, maybe when you don't have as many family expenses, but medical expenses, just all kinds of things. So I just want to say this, not to drag this conversation down, but to just be an encouragement, is like, let's think with an open mind. Let's do research on what our lifestyle is, how much money we may actually need. Let's look at project some different numbers. If you like to hop on a call, we do have a link down below, and we help people walk through and talk about how to properly save for retirement, how to think about this. What are some books and different resources you can read and tools you can use? At this point, there is no excuse really for someone who's making some money, who can save a little bit of extra money, not to be saving. You've heard me talk about this before on apps like Robinhood. You can start investing with as little as $1 a day. And will $1 a day get you ready for retirement? No, but it will get the conversation going. It allows you access into the system, and it allows you to get going. And that's what we want to talk about, is we want to get you going, because once you get started, you can get going. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you save for retirement? $1 at a time. But you got to get started. And today is the best day. We're actually going to put our link to the Robinhood account. If you want to open up an account on Robinhood, we're going to put a little link below. I do want to add a thing that if you open an account using that link, we do get a little kickback from them. It's what is it called? What are those links called?
Like affiliate link, or
yes, an affiliate link. And so it helps support our channel. They'll give us like a little fractional share of stock, and you'll get a little fractional share of stock too. So just want to throw that in there too.
And so before we end, I just wanted to actually pull up an actual retirement calculator and walk people through how to use it, because I've pulled these up before and they've been a little bit confusing to me, at least. So thanks for having the fifth point. I guess I got distracted doing something else and never added that fifth point on there. So this is a retirement calculator. I like NerdWallet just because I feel like their calculators are relatively simple, but there's plenty of other retirement calculators out there. This is just the one that I've pulled up. So we have a little bit of a prescribed scenario in here, but we just want to walk through each step and show you kind of how the numbers can fluctuate and change. So the basic thing it's going to ask you for is like, what's your current age? So how old are you? What's your annual pre-tax income? So we've got a 32-year-old who's making about 180K pre-tax. And we're just assuming, right, that this person has about 100,000 in their retirement savings so far. And this is, they've kept their expenses low. They've been contributing since they started their careers, and it's grown to $1,000. So they're at a point now where their monthly contributions are around 12%. So you can see this 12%, if it's not 12, and I don't know if you can see if this is big enough. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. The monthly contribution would be $1,800 pre-tax, right? Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
So this would be before taxes were taken out, right? So, and then this was the one where I was hoping you could explain this monthly budget in retirement. So this is like what you expect to spend in retirement. Is that correct? Am I saying that correctly? The general recommendation is that you spend 70% of your pre-retirement income. So that assumes that you're going to be downgrading.
Well, I think, one thought that it could assume is that, let's say you have a house and you're 30 and you bought this house at 30. So when you're retiring at 67, you've paid off your 30-year mortgage and you're no longer responsible for this 30-year mortgage. So that allows you to save, however much you're paying in your mortgage. You are still responsible for property taxes. And one thing I see more often than not with homeowners going into retirement having worked in wealth management for several years, I hear more people saying one thing that I did not think about in retirement is that the amount of money I was going to need to put in my house costs more. Because when you live in a house for 30 years, 20 years, it comes to a point where almost you need to rebuild the house. And I don't mean stud for stud, but I mean that house needs to be remodeled. You're probably going to want to redo the bathroom, the kitchen, redo some landscaping, about decks, just things wear out, stairways, things wear out when you're living in something after a while. I mean, imagine driving a car for 30 years, then wanting it to get another 20 years out of it in retirement. Like, you would have to do some work and some maintenance to it. Same thing happens with houses. So I think maybe that's possibly why they're saying, okay, maybe you're going to, because you think if maybe 30% of their income is tied to or 20% of their income is tied to their mortgage, they would still be responsible for property taxes, but maybe that brings it down. But another thought is once again, as we talked about accounts, if this is someone's 401k, your 401k should not be, it's great if I don't want to speak down on you if this is all that you have. That's not my goal here, but I want to expand your thinking for retirement. While a 401k is a retirement account, hopefully it won't be your only means for retirement. I think this should be one thing. So you're making 180, you're putting in 12% of that 180. It would also be great if you're contributing money to a regular brokerage account. So you have, this amount in this account, you have some money in your traditional brokerage account. Maybe you're also into crypto, you have some money in that account. So then you're pulling some money out of this account. You're pulling some Social Security, being that it's still available. And when we get there, fingers crossed, you're pulling, maybe you're spending down on your crypto or you're borrowing against it. You have some money in a Roth IRA that's tax-free that you're getting as well. And you're getting money from a bucket of different accounts. Maybe you also have some rental property and you're receiving some rental income as well. But I just want to say that, having one account, just one retirement account, you got to fund the heck out of that thing to be living at 100% of it. But, that's one thing, or we can get multiple different seeds growing. They're can grow to some large plants that can really support you into retirement.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. And so you can see some of the numbers shaping up here, but I'm just going to scroll down and show you the advanced details as well that we've put in here, right? So my goal is to retire at 67, which is around the average time that people retire. Life expectancy is 95, God willing. That's amazing. And then this assumes an 18% or an 8% pre-retirement rate of return in the 401k account, and then a post-retirement rate of return of 8. And this is a little bit more generous. There is different averages that you'll have each year, right? So the stock market will return higher some years, lower other years, but on average, it'll be around 8% over the course of the time that you're building your retirement fund. This also assumes a 4% inflation rate and assumes that you never change jobs, you never increase your income past 3% per year, right? And so goes back to what Gabe was saying earlier. I was trying to think, like, how many people are actually like trying to climb the ladder, grow their careers, earn more income. It's about a third of Americans are doing that. So this is like a very conservative approach here for the most part, with some manipulation, but this would be how you would actually play around with your numbers, right? At a very basic level. This is not like a, financial advisor protection or anything like that, but you can see, what you'll have saved is 6.6 million. What you'll need is 5.8. So you'll be good in the scenario, right? But let's just say you're only contributing 3%. So you can see how that number changes drastically, right?
And what I would say is, if you were 32 and you ever needed to go hard in the paint and you could, I would say if you had to choose, go hard in the paint from 32 to 42. And then if you needed to loosen up, you could loosen up a little bit more at 42, because all of the money that you went hard in the paint from 32 to 42, it still has a longer time to grow and
That's
be in
right.
the market and compound interest. So then even if you had to pull back some, and that's one regret I have, is that when I was 30, 31, 32, I wish I would have been going way harder in the paint, but I didn't quite understand it to the depth that I understand it now. I'm like, I could have been living off a half of what I was living off back then. And I thought I had stuff I needed to do. I could have lived off a half and still been kicking it. And so I just, I wasn't really thinking to that deep level. It's like I should have been quadrupling what I had going into accounts. And then even as I see what the market has done over the last little bit, I mean, man, it would have just been so much better, more better, as a pastor in Oakland would say, Pastor Javier. And so if you can still make it more better. And so just get at it.
Yeah, go at it. And this is just, I'm showing, like, if you were to do 5%, obviously that changes your number. That may mean that you can't retire when you feel like you want to retire. I know that's not fun, but work a few more years and you'll get there. Right. So when you can kind of see, I think for me, always, it's like when I can start to see and play around with the numbers, that personally gives me more motivation to start taking action. When you don't see and you can't see it, it's like you're aiming at, it's like what we were talking about last week with the financial goals. You're kind of aiming. It's very like you have a loose aim. There isn't, you don't have a strong vision for what you're looking for. You don't have concrete numbers that you're driving towards. And I think when you actually sit down and put pen to paper, you can get a lot of clarity, and that can increase your motivation, which will increase your ability, your action to learn more about this, figure out what your 401k says, figure out what retirement plans work for you, maybe engage a financial professional, and just kind of move you in a direction where you're actually going to be able to make meaningful progress and hopefully, achieve a retirement that you're genuinely excited about, and feel confident as you're going towards that goal. And so that's all we've got for today.
Do you have any questions?
Is there any questions for those of you that are watching around retirement? How much you think you should be contributing? I mean, I don't know that we can go into those detailed questions, but any comments? Feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll stick around for a while. I know it's 7:03, but we're here for you, and
so
happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, and in closing, I was thinking, and I touched on this account, but it's like, which of the accounts that we talked on should you prioritize this year? So if you had to leave here with one account to prioritize, I would say if you are part of a job that offers an employer-sponsored retirement account, go open that one. So if they have a 401k, 403b, or a SEP IRA, whatever your employer has, I would say start with that one. That would be the one to prioritize. It's going to give you the highest amount that you can put in. And even if you can't contribute enough to maxing it out, it's also possible that your employer is going to match. And so I would say get started with that. If you do not have access to an employer-sponsored account, I would say start with either a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. You can open up one of those on Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard. Robinhood has some IRA options. So there's a ton of custodians where you can get started with these, but I would say get started. So if you can start with your employer option, start there first. If maybe you work in a business that, maybe you're a barber and you don't have an employer option, or you're a photographer, or you're a freelancer, to go ahead and start with an IRA and get that going. You can literally set one of those up in 10 minutes or less tonight and start and connect your bank and start making your first contributions.
Cool.
Yes. And so yeah, that's what I want to say. I don't want to overload you with action items, but let's take a step this week so that you can get one step better with taking charge of your financial future, living within your means, designing a life that you're extremely excited about today.
Yeah. And I just think, even to bring this full circle from the beginning, I think we have an idea that retirement is going to be our best life, when we really want you to live your best life right now. Like, right now is a good time to live your best
While
life.
staying within your means and planning for a
That's right.
financially responsible future. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
The finance feedback right there. But, how can you create a life that you're genuinely excited about right now? And that's kind of our whole goal at Steadyworth, is how can we equip you with the knowledge to really do that well, and do that confidently, and do that in a way that's going to set you up financially, and to just be super, super smart with your money. So you get to define your future. You don't have to, let anyone else do that. And so, yeah, we're excited that you joined us. Thank you so much for those of you who've joined us. If you've joined us for the whole time, please drop a comment in the chat. We so appreciate you for joining us. We'll stick around for maybe a little bit longer if anyone has any questions, and then we'll let you get on with your Sunday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Potentially Monday. We've had some people from other countries join. So, yeah.
Well, also, if you have a question and you weren't able to submit it here, you can send it to hello@Steadyworth and steadyworth.com, and we will make sure to respond. We will let you get back to your Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Have an awesome day, and we will see you next week.